Hey all, Peter Combofiend Rufus here with some of the changes for Ryu you should be on the lookout for when Ultra Street Fighter 4 drops. We've given Ryu some new tools to make him more effective both on the ground and in the air, so let's get into it. Ryu's jumping middle punch has been a staple attack since Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. In the Street Fighter 4 series, however, this attack has always felt lacking as mentioned by Ryu players. To make this attack more exciting and effective, his jumping middle punch has been changed so that it is now special cancelable on the first hit. This opens up new fun yet damaging possibilities. To use this going up or down? That's the real question. Ryu's Shoryuken attack is one of those specials that you really love if using Ryu, or really hate if fighting him due to the perceived high reward and low risk associated with it. To address this, Ryu is more punishable when the player attempts to focus dash cancel forward after a light or medium punch uppercut. Previously, Ryu players were able to throw this attack out without having to worry about the consequences, but that's all changed. Ryu's combo ability was decent but felt very straightforward. Ryu players requested to have some kind of spice added. Unfortunately, no one could quite put their finger on what that spice was. In an effort to solve this issue, if the first hit of Ryu's EX Shoryuken is cancelled, he's now able to connect whichever attack he wants. This means that he'll now be able to connect his Metsu Shoryuken completely, or whatever else players come up with. Overall, Ryu is still extremely solid and has only gotten better due to his increase in options. Players who have strong fundamentals will still continue to do extremely well with him, whereas those who like to play unconventionally now have the ability to do so. With the increased utility of his EX Shoryuken and his jumping middle punch, Ryu specialists will have their hands full creating new ways to dispense of their opponents that much quicker. And Bison has always been considered solid, but with his low damage output, not all that intimidating. Let's see if that issue was resolved as we look at some of his more prominent changes. And Bison's ground game is pretty strong, but due to him being a charge character, players had to use many attacks before his specials, reducing his overall combo damage, or skip using his special moves altogether to maximize damage. To fix this, we've made his far-standing middle punch special cancelable. This will now give players the ability to tack on more damage while still being able to integrate his special moves into the combos. Bison's anti-air capabilities don't normally allow him to do all that much damage outside of his ultra. In an effort to increase his output slightly, the juggle on the second hit has been increased. This will now allow him to follow up with a Psycho Crusher or any other crazy things Bison players can come up with. Against certain projectile characters, Bison was at such a severe disadvantage that players felt that they lost the match at the selection screen. To help with that, the projectile invincibility on his EX knee press has been increased so that he's not as helpless in the projectile battle. Bison's mobility paired with his abundance of escape options made it rather difficult for players to put pressure on Bison effectively. To address that, the recovery on his teleport has been increased by just a little bit, meaning that Bison players will now have to use it a bit more intelligently or face being punished by the opponent. Ever since Psycho Punisher was changed from a quarter circle motion to a charge motion, the effectiveness of the Ultra has decreased greatly. In an effort to make it more usable once again, yet not overly abusable, the total charge time has been reduced. This means players who make the proper read will once again be rewarded greatly when using this Ultra. Bison has definitely improved overall. His ability to fight certain projectile characters has been improved, as with his overall damage output, which was specifically viewed as one of, if not his primary weakness. Although one of his methods of escape has been weakened, his other options remain untouched, which means he'll still have ways out of pressure if played correctly. Gouken's range game has always been pretty decent, but his in-close game was a tad weak. Let's explore his changes to see whether he's gained the tools necessary to finally hold his ground. Outside of Gouken's counter, he had no real attack that he could rely on to prevent the opponent from overwhelming him. To help with this, his crouching light punch has been sped up slightly so that he can now turn the tide when the opponents are relentlessly pressuring him. When faced against a majority of the cast, Gouken lacked the way to punish unsafe attacks, thereby allowing his opponents to run rampant against him. To help increase his ability to play a more well-rounded game, his far-standing light kick has become special cancelable, super cancelable, and focus cancelable. With this, those fighting Gouken will have to think twice about throwing out the wrong attacks or face the repercussions. Gouken's ability to do damage from his low attacks was severely underwhelming, as his crouching middle punch allowed opponents to recover too quickly for his projectile or any other special attacks to combo, leaving his only reliable low attack in the form of his crouching hard kick. In order to give Gouken players some more options, the hit advantage on his crouching medium punch has been increased a bit so that when performed, his Hadouken and other specials will now combo. Gouken's EX Tatsu was one of his primary defensive moves in addition to his EX counter. However, due to its high propensity to go over low profile attacks and its slow startup, it was a high risk, low reward attack that did more bad than good. To make this attack more effective, the startup of the attack has been reduced, while the hitbox has been increased downward and in front, thereby increasing its reliability. Overall, Gouken has become much more of a threat in Ultra Street Fighter 4. He now has the tools to slow down the opponent's pressure, as well as the ability to punish from slightly further out, things he wasn't able to do before. With the increase in range to his EX Tatsu, opponents will have to think twice about how they approach him or risk being kicked in the face. On the flip side, Gouken players will have to make sure that they don't abuse their newfound powers, otherwise it could cost them the match. Evil Ryu is known for big burst damage, but outside of that, his tools were a tad limited. Let's look at his changes to see if this issue was finally addressed. Evil Ryu players told us that Evil Ryu has decent damage output, but his low life resulted in them losing way before they could get their offense started. To address that, we've increased his total life by 50, which should definitely help in the long run. Evil Ryu's target combo was decent, however due to it only coming out after his close standing middle punch, its utility was rather limited. To increase its overall utility, the target combo can now be performed from further out, allowing for new pressure strings and combo opportunities. The primary purpose of Evil Ryu's forward and middle kick was to go over low attacks and allow him a way to get in from further out. Unfortunately, some characters ducked too low to get hit by it, resulting in this move being less effective than it should have been. To ensure that this attack worked as intended, the hitbox around Evil Ryu's foot has been increased quite dramatically. Evil Ryu's Shoryuken attack into focus dash cancel forward was a great low risk high reward method players would use to swing a match back into their favor without really worrying about possible repercussions. This has since been changed in Ultra Street Fighter 4 with a reduction on the advantage Evil Ryu receives after focus cancelling an uppercut. If done incorrectly, Evil Ryu now faces the potential to be punished after a forward dash, so be more cautious when using this. Evil Ryu was a fairly good character in AE 2012 and only needed a few tweaks to become that much more solid. With the improvements to his vitality and key normals, Evil Ryu will definitely become a force to be reckoned with this time around. She was already a strong character in AE 2012, so the changes made were more so to balance her out while still helping her retain her fun features. Without further ado, let's get into some of her changes. Cammy was able to stun characters pretty quickly in AE 2012. As a result, her stun output on some of her stronger combo attacks has been slightly reduced. The attacks specifically called out are her close standing hard punch and her crouching heavy punch, which have been reduced by 30 and 50 stun respectively. In addition to Cammy's strong ground game, her cannon strike allowed her to pressure opponents in ways that most characters just had no answer for. Additionally, it could be done high up in the air with Cammy remaining advantageous when the attack was hit or blocked. This has since been changed, so Cammy players will have to use the correct height when using this move or face being punished. Due to the overall high reward and low risk of Cammy's cannon spike, the attack has been adjusted to make it slightly more disadvantageous when the opponent blocks the attack and she tries to focus cancel and dash forward. This means Cammy players will have to exercise greater caution when using this attack or face proper punishment from her opponents. Although Cammy is considered strong once she gets in, Cammy players remarked that it was sometimes difficult to get in and were requesting new ways to help them do so. To address this, Cammy can now cancel her hooligan combo into a cannon strike. This should provide Cammy players a quick way to close the distance and get her into striking distance that much faster. Regardless of whether Cammy's gyro drive smasher hit in its full animation form or not didn't really matter, as the damage difference was less than 100. As you could combo into the non-animation version quite easily, that difference was even less noticeable. This has since been adjusted, with the last hit now doing 40 damage less than it did in AE 2012. Cammy is still strong in Ultra Street Fighter 4. Although she has to work a little bit more than she did in AE 2012 and be played a little more carefully than before, she still has the ability to steamroll her opponents once she gets the momentum going. With the addition of the cannon strike cancel from the hooligan combo, Cammy players will have even more ways to mix up and scare their opponents. Blanka has always been a tricky character, but once his tricks were figured out, he fell pretty far in the ranks. Will that be the case this time around? Let's look at his changes and see. For Blanka players to effectively score combo damage, they had to perform extremely difficult links that left no room for error. This has been addressed by adding more advantage to his crouching middle kick on hit. Now Blanka players can score more damage while landing combos that start from crouching middle kick more consistently due to the increased leniency. Certain matchups for Blanka were extremely difficult due to him being punished when landing a Blanka ball successfully against the opponent. This resulted in Blanka players sacrificing damage so that they would not be punished for playing correctly. In an effort to fix this, the heavy Blanka ball has been adjusted to knock down from all ranges. Blanka's escape options when he's knocked down are rather non-existent once the opponent realizes his only option is a rainbow roll. To add some versatility to his wake-up game, all versions of Blanka's vertical rolling are now focus cancelable. Blanka's Ultra Shot of Earth provided him with much needed options against both airborne and grounded opponents. Unfortunately, the difficulty associated with landing the anti-air version of Ultra 2 was rather high due to the narrow hitbox on the attack. It would also miss against certain characters when performed after a focus attack. This has since been resolved with the increase of the hitbox size during all active frame. Blanka has definitely improved in Ultra Street Fighter 4. Blanka players now have the ability to pursue damage through the effective use of his crouching middle kick, as well as the use of his heavy horizontal rolling attack. Additionally, Blanka now has a new escape option that opponents must take into account when they're pressuring him, making him more balanced overall. With the right combination of trickery, damage, and hard-to-read movements, Blanka players will be a bit more difficult to deal with this time around. This tricky agent has been burning and shocking the competition since the original Street Fighter 4 and shows no signs of stopping anytime soon. Let's see what's in store for her in Ultra Street Fighter 4. Viper players remarked how Viper didn't really have any decent medium-range attacks, thereby forcing them to rely on specials. To help reduce Viper's dependency on special attacks, her crouching middle kick range has been increased so that she can now connect the attack from further out. Viper's focus attack has long been considered the worst in the game due to its extremely slow startup. In an effort to increase its usefulness as well as bring her up to par with the rest of the cast, all levels of her EX and red focus attacks now come out 3 frames faster than they used to. To balance this out, however, the range at which these attacks hit have been minimized as it hit a lot further out than other focus attacks in the game. Although not as good as a typical Shoryuken, Viper's heavy Thunder Knuckle attack was still rather effective at stopping the opponent's advances, trading into an Ultra, in addition to being just about unpunishable when cancelled into a forward dash. To help even out the risk versus reward, Viper is now slightly more disadvantageous when cancelling this attack into a forward dash. Hitting Viper's super in the middle of a combo was frustrating for Viper players for 2 reasons. 1, it did less damage than other supers in the game, and 2, the intended attack was typically an EX Seismo performed incorrectly. To fix this, the damage has been increased by 50 so that when Viper players do go for the super, they'll at least get the standard damage. Another fix applied was to change the command on the super so that if it does come out, it's entirely intentional. Those fighting Viper had a hard time knowing when to punish her whenever she missed her Ultra due to the large amount of smoke on the screen. To help players see what's happening that much more, the smoke has been reduced greatly, which means that she'll now be punished a little bit more heavily, so try not to miss that Ultra very often. Viper has been traditionally viewed as a character who is special attack heavy and therefore a bit one-dimensional, yet effective. With the increase in effectiveness to her basic attacks, she can now play a spacing game like the rest of the cast. Viper players will however have to be a little less reckless with the heavy Thunder Knuckle this time around, as one wrong guess could cost her the entire game. Yang has been working hard to steal the spotlight from his high-flying brother, so let's see if the changes he received this time around will finally allow him to do so. Yang players informed us that since Yang is primarily a ground character, he should be able to close in on the opponents that much faster. To address this, his walk speed has been increased a bit from his AE 2012 version. Yang's standing light kick is one of his best tools for playing a range game as well as punishing attacks that push Yang out. Unfortunately, it came out too slow for it to be all that effective. To fix this, the far stand light kick now comes out a little bit faster than it used to, which will definitely help him punish attacks faster. Yang's jumping middle kick was one of the best tools in Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, and quite possibly one of the strongest cross-up attacks in the entire Street Fighter 4 series. Unfortunately, it was changed for the worst in AE 2012 to the point where it was almost useless, which made a lot of Yang players pretty sad. In an effort to make this attack better, but not as good as it was in AE because it was much too strong, the hitbox has been increased to allow for a more consistent cross-up. Yang's far-standing middle punch is considered a decent attack by Yang players outside of the fact that it was not special cancelable. As his range attack options are limited, his far-stand middle punch is now special cancelable to allow him to play a more range-based game. Yang's command throw provided him too much reward as the damage after a successful command grab was the same as if the opponent wasn't blocking. As this is essentially an attack, 1 point of damage has been added when the throw is successful. This means that all additional hits following the throw will now do less damage. Yang's Mantis Strikes are his primary combo ender, yet they did not do all that much damage, thereby making Yang seem pretty weak. To address this, the third hit of his Mantis Strikes now do a bit more damage than they used to in AE 2012. Yang's light Senkyutai attack was quite useful in that its invincibility and advantage on block when cancelled allowed Yang to reverse the opponent's offense at will. Due to the high reward and low risk associated with this attack, the advantage on guard when cancelled has been reduced. Be careful when throwing this out or face big damage. Yang has improved dramatically from AE 2012. His primary issues of damage and movement have all been addressed, which means that he's only gotten stronger this time around. He still has lower vitality than the rest of the cast, but with his tweaks, he'll be dishing out damage with the best of them. The Rindekan Queen has long been grappling foes in the Street Fighter 4 series, and although explosive, she's viewed as not all that threatening when you're outside of her throw range, and also seen as a little bit linear. Let's explore some of her more pertinent changes to see if that's all been addressed. Makoto's crouching heavy kick is a great tool to catch those who are trying to jump away from a potential command grab. The big issue with this attack, however, was that it did less stun than the other heavy attacks in the game, leaving Makoto players to look for other options. In an effort to make this attack more effective, the stun has been increased by 80. Makoto's light and middle versions of the Tsurugi attack are great for blowing up opponents who like to throw or use low attacks constantly. If it hits, Makoto could connect her Ultra, land a big combo, or if blocked, keep her relentless pressure going without much worry of the opponent countering it. In an effort to balance out the risk associated with this attack, Makoto's disadvantage when the attack is blocked has been slightly increased when done from the lowest point. Outside of EX Hayate, Makoto had no real way to combo off of her range attacks, thereby limiting her offense. To help address this, her EX Fukuyage now hits standing opponents. As this is rather strong and can lead to all kinds of new offense, the damage and stun associated with the attack has been reduced to prevent it from being a little too strong. Additionally, this attack has no invincibility, so be careful when throwing it out. Makoto's Seichusen Gozanseki was responsible for many comebacks and was very easy to connect off of a variety of attacks. Due to the fact that this Ultra is almost guaranteed to land once per round, the damage has been reduced so that Makoto players will depend on it less. Makoto's Abare Tosanami Ultra was created with the idea of giving Makoto a way to fight projectile characters. The way it has been more commonly used, however, was to avoid pressure and for her to get out of jail free. This has since been adjusted with the removal of the attack invincibility from the start of the Ultra, however, she still retains the projectile invincibility. Although Makoto has received a few nerfs, she is still that much better this time around. She can now keep up the momentum that much more due to her EX Fukuyage and cross-up buffs, whereas the crouching hard kick will now stun those who try to jump away faster, making her that much scarier. This Psyche Warrior has long been waiting for his chance to finally show off his skills. Have his changes brought him up to par with the rest of the other fighters? Let's go ahead and find out. Dancing Close Heavy Kick was considered to be one of his better attacks, however due to it only being usable in close, it greatly diminished its utility. In an effort to address this, his in-close heavy kick has now been assigned its own command so it can be done at will. Dan's Gouken attack already suffered from very limited range, but what really made this attack difficult to use was that Dan could get hit from far away when attempting to throw this out. To increase its usefulness and slightly decrease its risk, the area from which Dan could get hit from has been reduced from the tip of his hand to his forearm area. Dan's light Dan Kyaku had a tendency to go over certain characters when they were crouching, suddenly turning an offensive situation into a defensive one. The hitbox on the attack has been increased downwards so that the frequency in which it will hit opponents has increased, thereby increasing its usefulness. Although Dan's personal action would result in him receiving meter when it hit, it would leave him wide open to the opponent's counterattack. As Dan's personal actions are his mainstay, the meter gain has been readjusted so that when he uses the action, he will gain meter without having to hit the opponent. Dan's Koryuken is a great move that allowed Dan players a high reward, low risk reversal option that could also combo into his Haogadoken Ultra if it's successfully connected. As the risk did not match the reward, the advantage he has after cancelling the attack has been reduced slightly. The usefulness of Dan's Shisho Baraiken Ultra has always been questionable due to its limited range and non-armor breaking capabilities. Although the range has not been increased, the armor breaking effect has been added so that the opponent will not have to respect the Ultra that much more. Dan has improved quite a bit in Ultra Street Fighter 4. The change to his hard kick grants him access to new damaging combos, while the increase to his light Dan kick means that he will no longer have to worry about an opponent reversaling this attack due to it going over them. with a decrease in the size of the hurt box on his Gouken and the ability for him to gain meter from his personal actions regardless of if they hit or not, damn players now have to take less risk to be effective, thereby making them that much more threatening overall. The Raging Buffalo has a punch for just about every situation, although some of them aren't as effective as they could be. Let's look at his changes to see if he's been improving his punches or slacking off. Balrog's dash swing blow attack is unique in that the opponents have to block it standing. This, when used in tandem with his dash low, meant that players had to worry about his high-low game. Unfortunately, the dash swing blow was rather slow on startup and had a large disadvantage, making it one of his least desirable attacks. To help increase the utility, the light version has been changed so the charge time has been reduced, as well as his disadvantage on block. To keep it balanced, however, the stun damage, attack damage, and advantage on hit have been reduced as well. Balrog's Violent Buffalo has been adjusted so that players can now decide if they want to end the Ultra with either a straight or an uppercut by either holding punches or kicks. There were instances where the last hit would miss due to it defaulting to the uppercut ender, which would cause Balrog players to be punished even when the Ultra was already hitting the opponent. With this change, Balrog players should be able to get the full damage at all times without worry. Be sure to choose the right ender, however, as the straight rush does not have any juggle potential. Balrog's Dirty Bull was largely considered to be a pretty useless ultra. The small throw window, disadvantage after hit, and general difficulty of executing the attack consistently made this ultra a rather undesirable selection. Taking those weaknesses into account, the ultra has been adjusted accordingly. It now grabs from further out, has less recovery after successfully hitting the opponent, and has seen a command change from 2 half circles to 2 full circles. To make up for the benefits, however, the damage has been reduced due to the large amount of stun damage Balrog inflicts upon the opponent. Although Balrog has had a large variety of special punches at his disposal, due to their either slow speed or large disadvantage, they weren't used as often as they should be, thereby creating a very linear game that people learned how to predict. The changes made now allow Balrog players to use his punches more confidently and creatively. These changes, in addition to those made to his Ultra, combined with his already strong normal attacks, will definitely result in Balrog being that much more solid this time around. This high-flying grappler has long been considered one of the weakest characters in the Street Fighter 4 series. He's had quite a few adjustments made to hopefully help him soar up above the competition this time around, so come join me as I go over some of his changes a little bit more in depth. T-Hawk players have long complained how T-Hawk's crouching middle kick, although decent, wouldn't lead to anything substantial. To fix this, T-Hawk's crouching middle kick is now special cancelable. With this, T-Hawk can now keep up the momentum he worked so hard to gain. T-Hawk's light Condor Spire was considered a decent special move that T-Hawk could use to get through projectiles. The downsides to the attack, however, were that the Condor Spire had too much startup, was very easy to punish, and didn't really combo off of any of his attacks. To fix all these issues, the attack now has faster startup. This single change allows it to combo more consistently, while also making it harder to punish. T-Hawk players found that when they were knocked down, the only options presented to them to stop the opponent's pressure were extremely risky. To help give them a slightly safer option, the EX Tomahawk Buster is now focus cancelable. T-Hawk players should however take notice that if they forward dash, the opponent will still be able to punish them. A big issue faced by T-Hawk players when using Raging Slash was that if done too quickly, one of his various special attacks would come out, resulting in a frustrating miss. Additionally, the players felt the range was a bit lacking. Both of these situations have been addressed by 1, changing the command to a half circle back 2 times plus kicks, and 2, by increasing the range on the Ultra in front of T-Hawk's chest area. T-Hawk was considered a bottom 5 character in AE 2012. In Ultra, however, he's definitely moved up the ranks. With his offensive and defensive options only seeing improvements, he will be a stronger, more well-rounded threat this time around. This fast-footed wrestler has been running circles around everyone since Vanilla Street Fighter 4, but has become less and less of a threat in each version. Let's see if some of his new changes will help to strike fear in the opponents once more. El Fuerte's Fajita Buster throw attack was decent when it connected, but was rather easy to avoid and led to El Fuerte getting punished in a variety of ways. To increase the reward for the rare times this attack lands, the damage has been increased by quite a bit. El Fuerte's Quesadilla Bomb attack is quite effective and can really surprise the opponent. The main issues with this attack, however, were the extremely large charge time associated with it and its low damage. To address these two issues, charge time for the light and medium versions have been cut in half, whereas the heavy version's charge time has been reduced by 40%. Additionally, each version has seen a damage increase over what it did in AE 2012. The biggest weakness that Fuerte faced was that he could be thrown on his wake-up, leaving Fuerte players frustrated at their lack of options after being knocked down. In an effort to solve this, his EX Quesadilla Bomb has been given full invincibility, which means that players will not have to be wary of Fuerte on his wake-up. Fuerte has long been an annoying character, but never quite a solid one. The changes made to him here will now allow those without the fastest hands a chance at beating the opponent through solid play and even stronger reads. The Honda has been known to hold his ground with the best of them, although some would say that he doesn't hit anywhere near as hard as he should. Has that issue been resolved in Ultra through his changes? Keep watching and find out. The Honda's Standing Heavy Punch was one of his more revered attacks in Super Street Fighter 4 due to the damage output. Unfortunately, with the damage reduction that was received in Arcade Edition, it became all that less useful. To increase its utility, the damage has been slightly increased once more. The Honda's EX Sumo Headbutt is a pretty strong defensive move that can put a stop to any type of offense coming Honda's way. In addition to it also doing decent damage, it was rather difficult to punish by a majority of the cast, which led the Honda players to use it without fear. In an effort to balance out the attack, Honda now stays closer to the opponent once they block it, thereby increasing the risk of use. Honda players remarked that although rewarding, connecting anything after his EX hands was quite difficult. In an effort to help Honda players hit this more consistently, the advantage after EX hands has been increased slightly. As this could lead to too much damage, however, the EX hands now do a little less damage than they did previously. Honda's Orochi Breaker was largely considered useless due to its lack of range. To make this Ultra more effective, the distance at which the Ultra will connect from has been increased by quite a bit. In Super Street Fighter 4, Honda was considered one of the better characters due to his damage output, but not so much in versions that followed due to his damage reduction. With his offensive abilities improved once more, he'll be able to bring the damage to his opponents faster than they may be able to cope with. Also, with the increase to the range of his Ultra 2, he'll now be able to punish opponents who attack him incorrectly, whereas before he could not. Considered one of the weaker characters in the Street Fighter 4 series, this Rhythmic Warrior has been struggling to show he's on par with the rest of the cast. Has Dee Jay finally found his groove in Ultra Street Fighter 4? Let's look at some of his changes and see if that's the case. Dee Jay's Far Stand Middle Punch was considered a fairly decent attack as it hit from further out. Unfortunately, due to its long startup, it wasn't used as often as it could have been. To make this attack more useful, the startup time on the attack has been reduced. Now it can be used in combos and for counter pokes. Although Dee Jay's knee shot was very useful, his ability to derive damage off it was questionable. In an effort to allow Dee Jay more damaging options, the advantage after connecting a knee shot has been increased by quite a bit. This will now allow Dee Jay to go into his stronger attack sooner, giving him higher damage output overall. It's no secret that Dee Jay is rather weak when he's knocked down. Opponents can just choose to throw him or attack him on the ground, with Dee Jay players not having any real options to retaliate. To help alleviate this slightly, Dee Jay's EX Machine Gun Blow is now throw invincible at the startup. The speed at which the EX Machine Gun Blow comes out has also been increased dramatically to make it that much more usable. To keep the attack balanced, however, recovery has been added when the attack is blocked. Dee Jay's options for pressuring the opponent with special moves was pretty much limited to his Air Slasher, as all his other options left him vulnerable to punish. To help with that, the recovery on his Light Rolling Sobat has been reduced slightly, making the attack that much better. As this attack breaks armor and is hard to punish now, it has been balanced out through the loss of its low attack and vulnerability. Dee Jay's Sobat Festival Ultra helped Dee Jay fight other projectile users through his projectile invincibility. Unfortunately, for this to work consistently, Dee Jay had to be closer than his ideal distance, otherwise it would be too slow to hit the opponent. To increase the utility of this Ultra, the distance Dee Jay travels on the first two kicks has been improved. Now Dee Jay will be a threat from any range. Depending on who you ask, Dee Jay might still be finding his groove. He's gained tools for offense in the form of more damage in his combos and less recovery on certain attacks. He's also a bit less helpless on his wake-up due to delayed wake-up and throw invincibility on his EX Machine Gun Blow. That said, winning with Dee Jay may still be a bit more difficult than other characters, but it'll also be that much more rewarding. Although Gen had two styles at his disposal, players tended to favor his Mantis style over his Crane style. Will that still be the case this time around? Let's take a closer look at the changes and find out. Regardless of what style Gen is in, his low stun paired with his low vitality meant he was always hanging on to a lifeline regardless of how the match was going. In an effort to allow Gen a new lease on life, his stun has been increased by 50 points. Gen's focus attack was one of the further hitting focus attacks in the game. As he hit a lot further than where the attack ended, opponents were not able to properly space Gen out, resulting in many focus attacks hitting in an unexpected manner. In an effort to make the area that hits the opponent match with the animation, the hitbox of the focus attack has been reduced to around his hand area. Gen's crouching light punch in the crane stance was highly underused due to it having less advantage on hit than it took for the crouching light punch to come out. To increase the usefulness of this attack, Gen's advantage on hit has been increased slightly. With this, Gen now has access to new strategies when using his crane form. As Gen's heavy Gekuro caused knockdown, there was almost no reason to use any other version. This, however, resulted in many matches where Gen would have meter in round 3, nullifying anything his opponent could do. As the hard knockdown is quite useful to Gen's game, the hard knockdown has now been given to the EX Gekuro. Now Gen players will have to decide whether they want to use the meter to get a hard knockdown in a setup or not. Those who fought Gen voiced how frustrating it was that he was able to continue to kick even after the EX Gekuro was blocked, thereby making potential punishes to the attack quite difficult. Taking that into account, Gen's ability to continue with additional kicks has been removed. As that meant that Gen would be a sitting duck in the air, his recovery has been reduced so it'll be a little bit harder to punish. Gen's Zetsui attack allowed for him to end the match quite early on, or to make some big comebacks due to it connecting off of most of his attacks, and also comboing into his Ultra immediately after. As this was considered a tad strong, the damage has been reduced slightly on the Super. Those who have played Gen in the Alpha series let us know that they felt that Gen's Shintenketsu Ultra felt lacking, and it was also extremely difficult to combo into and didn't cause any stun. In an effort to address the fans, the Ultra has seen 2 adjustments. Firstly, it has a larger hitbox so it can combo from some of his other attacks and can hit from further out. And secondly, the Ultra now stuns the opponent in addition to the damage caused. If Gen players are fast enough on the mix-up after the Ultra connects, they'll reap an extremely large reward. Overall, Gen is still very viable in Ultra Street Fighter 4. With so many changes made to his 2 playstyles, the introduction of delayed wake-up, and reduction in damage on some of his more abusable attacks, Gen players will have some adjustments to make to still be effective. Once players take these changes into account and explore his buffs, such as his crane stance improvements as well as his ability to combo into his Ultra 2 more consistently, players will see how versatile the new Gen has become. The Jaguar of the Muay world is always on a mission to prove that he's stronger than Sagat. Let's explore some of his changes to see if that's finally the case. Adon's crouching light punch is his primary attack used for hit confirms. After 2 crouching light punches, however, Adon's damage output reduces by quite a bit. As Adon players need all the damage they can get, Adon's advantage on hit has been improved slightly, which will now allow him to connect stronger attacks from further out. Adon's Jaguar kick damage was considered pretty high for a special attack that was rather fast and hard to counter. As this attack is rather effective, the damage on hit and block has been toned down so that Adon players won't solely rely on this attack to win, and opponents will wonder how they were knocked out so quickly. Adon's Rising Jaguar cancel gave him an extremely high reward, low risk option, which prevented opponents from placing pressure on him. To even out the risk versus reward, the recovery on his forward dash after canceling the Jaguar has been increased. Now opponents can punish him a bit easier when this attack is blocked. Against certain characters, Adon players could combo his Light Rising Jaguar so only the second hit would connect, thereby allowing him to connect another Light Rising Jaguar. With the introduction of delayed wake-up negatively affecting his game, the trajectory of the Light Rising Jaguar was changed so that Adon has a chance to regularly dish out noticeable damage when he has the opponent in the corner. Adon's Ultra Jaguar Revolver had the habit of going over characters that were at point-blank range. This meant that Adon players who used the Ultra correctly could sometimes get punished, leaving them to avoid using it when the situation normally called for it. This has since been addressed in that Adon no longer passes over the opponent during the first few kicks, resulting in him getting all the damage every time. Adon players will have some slight adjustments to make to be effective this time around. The larger disadvantage after a blocked Rising Jaguar and slightly reduced damage off Jaguar kicks means that Adon players will have to make a few more reads than before to win. The change to his Light Rising Jaguar, however, makes him that much more of a threat in the corner. Once Adon players take these changes amongst others into account, they'll still do quite well. This schoolgirl continues to vie for Ryu's attention through hard hits and relentless pressure. Will her changes allow her to finally strike some sense into Ryu? Let's continue on and find out. Sakura's jumping heavy punch was one of the best jumping attacks in AE 2012. There weren't many characters that could anti-air this attack properly, which meant that more often than not, using this attack to get in was the right choice. As the pressure and damage she got from this attack was so great, the hurt box has since been increased so that opponents can anti-air it a bit more consistently. Outside of Sakura's crouching medium kick, she really didn't have any special cancelable moves that could be used from further out, thereby making her range game rather predictable. To help add to her ranged attack repertoire,
Her far-standing heavy punch is now special cancelable. Now Sakura players have another long-range attack to threaten and punish the opponents with. Sakura's EX Shunpukyaku was one of the most advantageous special attacks in the game. As there was virtually no risk associated with using this, Sakura players were able to use this attack to turn the tide of the match when they were on the defensive, keep up their relentless pressure, or possibly combo into a knockdown or ultra. In an effort to keep the attack useful yet not overpowered, the advantage on block has been slightly reduced so that the opponents can move a little sooner than they used to. As Sakura is generally the aggressor, opponents had to work quite hard to corner her. Whenever this would happen, however, Sakura players were able to escape quite easily by performing her air Shunpukyaku early on in her jump. This has since been addressed in that when used on the way up, she can no longer get away from the opponent. Now Sakura players will have to think of other methods to escape or fight their way out. Sakura's Shoken is a critical attack to Sakura's ground game. Unfortunately, there were instances where Sakura would hit the first few times with the attack, but miss with the others, resulting in her getting punished heavily. To reduce this occurrence, the hitbox on her Shoken has been increased by a bit, so that it'll hit much more consistently this time around. With the removal of unblockables and introduction of delayed wake-up, Sakura players will have to adjust their game from a knockdown setup type game to a strong ground game to be effective this time around. That said, Sakura has been given the tools to continue her hard-hitting reign of terror in the form of her far-standing heavy punch and Shoken buffs. Once players adjust their strategy with Sakura, they'll see that she can still hang with the best of them and may have different mix-ups than those employed in the past. The Colonel has been brawling with the best of them since Street Fighter 2 and doesn't show any signs of stopping. Let's see what changes he has in store for his opponents this time around. When played at the highest level, Guile is extremely hard to hit, as he has more than enough tools to fend off others, as well as benefits greatly from the introduction of delayed wake-up. His vitality has been reduced slightly to keep him balanced. Guile players remarked that it was extremely difficult to connect his crouching light punch into his crouching medium punch consistently, thereby reducing their overall damage output. As this is one of his key combos, the advantage after hitting a crouching light punch has been increased slightly. Guile's reverse spin kick allowed him a way to blow up those who like to constantly go for throws or for lows. Unfortunately, the kick had a tendency to miss certain characters whose profile was too low, thereby negating the usefulness of this attack. To address this, the hitbox on the attack has been increased so that it will now hit opponents that much more consistently. Guile's high kick allowed for some pretty good damage. Unfortunately, the hitbox would miss on a majority of the opponents, thereby making the attack rather situational. To make this attack more useful, the hitbox on the kick has been increased downward. Due to the extremely fast recovery on Guile's Sonic Boom, it was almost impossible to counter-hit him even when the opponent read it correctly. As there is much risk associated with trying to jump in on Guile, the counter-hit window when he throws a Sonic Boom has been increased so that those who jump correctly will now be properly rewarded. Guile's flash kick is the strong reversal that allows him to turn the tides on those pressuring him. As the risk associated with the attack was negated when cancelled with the forward dash, it was viewed as quite strong. To address this, when the light, medium, and heavy versions of the flash kick are cancelled with the forward dash, Guile is now at a bigger disadvantage. So use greater caution when using this, or face a well-calculated punish from the opponent. Although Guile has received a reduction in life, he'll be that much more harder to hit this time around in Ultra Street Fighter 4. The removal of unblockables means that Guile players can actually block jump-ins on their wake-up. Additionally, the inclusion of delayed wake-up means that Guile players will be further able to see which side airborne attacks are coming from. As he's already extremely strong on the defensive side, the buffs to his offensive capabilities mean he'll be one of the stronger, more well-rounded characters. Rose has been vanquishing foes with her soul power for quite a while and doesn't show any signs of stopping. Let's look at her changes and see how she'll vanquish foes this time around. Although Rose has pretty decent attacks, her low damage output always left something to be desired by Rose players. To fix this, her crouching light punch, crouching light kick, and crouching middle punch have all received a damage boost. Now damage against the opponents will add up faster than ever. As the Soul Spiral attack is Rose's primary combo ender, the damage output was rather negligible, especially after being scaled due to the large number of attacks generally used before it. In an effort to make this attack more useful, the damage has been increased slightly. Additionally, all versions can now hit the opponent on juggle, thereby increasing its overall usefulness. Rose's Soul Spiral was her primary source of stopping opponents' pressure. Unfortunately for her, however, if the opponent timed their attack correctly, they would still be able to hit her, thereby lowering the attack's overall effectiveness. To address this, the hit invincibility has been increased so that it can no longer be hit out before it comes out. To ensure that this is balanced, however, the throw invincibility has been removed. Although powerful, Rose's Illusion Spark came out much too slow to be used on reaction against projectile users or to punish attacks. To make this more useful, the startup time of the Ultra has been reduced slightly so that Rose players can finally use this Ultra to punish attacks on reaction. Rose has always been considered an extremely versatile and solid character. Although she'll have to worry about throws when using her EXO Spiral on Wake Up this time around, the increase to the invincibility means that she'll be able to blow through attacks without worry. That paired with her ability to land damage in a variety of ways more consistently means that she'll definitely rise up the ranks in Ultra Street Fighter 4. Seth's momentum-based game has left many foes defeated before they even knew what hit them. Will the opponents be able to cope with him this time around? Let's look at his changes and find out. Seth's far-standing hard punch was one of his best attacks and also one of his worst. It was great at hitting opponents far away, but was terrible due to its long recovery on hit and block. To fix this, the advantage on hit and block has been increased dramatically. Now Seth players have a more consistent ranged attack at their disposal, whereas before, they didn't. Seth's jumping hard kick allowed one of the most ambiguous cross-ups in Street Fighter 4 that even when blocked, allowed Seth to pressure the opponents without them being able to do much. As the advantage on block was the main issue here, his cross-up has been changed to his jumping middle kick. Although equally ambiguous as his jumping heavy kick was in AE 2012, opponents now have the ability to move if done too early in the jump. Seth had one of the most invincible Shoryukens in the entire game. As it was active for a long time, it was a guaranteed victory if used to chip an opponent on their wake up. Additionally, it was a great tool in that Seth could confirm if it hit to decide whether to cancel the attack or not, and it was relatively safe on block. As this was viewed as much too powerful, the middle and heavy Shoryukens have seen a variety of changes. Firstly, the invincibility frames have been reduced. Secondly, the Shoryuken is only cancelable on the first hit. And lastly, his advantage when the attack is cancelled has also been decreased. With these changes, Seth players really have to make the right call when using a Shoryuken, otherwise the round will be over before they even know it. Seth's ability to cancel his attacks into the 10 dimension left many players frustrated and that they never felt like they were getting away from Seth's pressure. As this attack is primarily for catching those who try to run away, it has been adjusted so that Seth can no longer cancel into this attack. He still, however, can cancel into the EX version if you want that additional pressure. Although Seth's Hyakuretsu attack is his primary combo ender outside of the corner, the damage associated with it was rather lacking. To help with this, each version now does 10 more damage. As this is a staple combo ender, the additional damage may end up hurting the opponent sooner than they realize. To be effective with Seth this time around, players will have to change their mindset from playing a stun-heavy guest character to a more controlled damage-dealing character. These changes have definitely increased the skill required to win with him. However, if his range attacks are used in conjunction with proper meter management in close, Seth can still be very threatening, just in an entirely new way. Juri has been causing pain and destruction with her array of kicks in Super Street Fighter 4, and she only gets better over time. Let's take a closer look at some of her more prominent changes in Ultra. Juri's stand light punch was key in her combos as it allowed her to go into more damaging combo enders. Unfortunately, this attack had a tendency to miss on certain crouching characters, thereby resulting in Juri players losing out on a lot of damage. To fix this, the hitbox has been extended downward to hit crouching characters more consistently. Juri players remarked that outside of her crouching medium kick, they didn't have very many far-hitting attacks that could be cancelled, thereby making her feel limited if she wasn't in close. To address this, her far stand middle punch can now be special cancelled. Now Juri players will have more options on how to deal with opponents who play a zoning game. Juri players noted that although the ES Shiksen was a decent attack, at times it wasn't good due to its default angle of approach, as well as some of the follow-up kicks missing sometimes. To help increase the usefulness of this attack, two key changes have been made. One, players can now control the angle at which Juri falls depending on which two buttons they press to activate the attack, and two, players can now manually input whether or not they would like to use the rest of the attacks. As this essentially gives her a dive kick, her advantage on block has been reduced slightly to keep her balanced. Juri's EX Impusha attack is her main defensive attack that left those who fought Juri quite frustrated. When used from a little ways out, she was able to either blow through opponents' attacks, or, if blocked, push the opponent too far away to punish her. As this attack is rather effective, the pushback on block has been reduced. This means that Juri players should exercise greater caution when using this, as opponents can now punish her more consistently. Juri was a rather solid character before, yet some tools were lacking which made her weak to low-profile characters and to those who had a better range game. With the adjustments made, she now has the tools to fight against all the matchups she was previously weak against. Juri players will find her much more rewarding and fun this time around as they incorporate her changes to create new ways to approach and pressure the opponent. The Tiger of the Muay Thai world is ready to put the beat down on all of those who stand in his way. Let's look at his changes to see how he'll go about doing it this time around. Sagat has seen a few minor changes to some of his normal attacks. His step kick has seen a damage reduction from 100 to 80. The reduction in damage was made due to his constant use in trades and in his combos that ended with either Ultra 1 or Ultra 2. His standing light kick is now special cancelable on the second hit. In the original Street Fighter 4, Sagat's standing light kick was only one hit and it was special cancelable. In Super Street Fighter 4, it was changed to a 2-hit attack that could only be cancelled on the first hit, thereby lowering its usefulness. In Ultra Street Fighter 4, this has been adjusted as requested by the fans, and now Sagat can cancel his stand light kick into a special attack on either the first or second hit. Sagat's Tiger Uppercut has seen an adjustment in his advantage when cancelled against a blocking opponent. Due to its invincibility, the risk associated with using this attack with meter was rather low. This is no longer the case, as Sagat players can now be punished by savvy opponents when the Tiger Uppercut is blocked and cancelled. Sagat players informed us of times when the first hit of the Tiger Knee would connect on the opponent, but the second would miss, resulting in Sagat players getting punished. This has since been adjusted through the first hit causing the opponent to stand, so that the second hit will connect more consistently. Now Sagat players can maximize their damage at all times. In the previous version of Street Fighter 4, Sagat players had to worry about whether they should connect the Tiger Destruction against an opponent in the corner or not. The reason for this was that the Ultra would cause the characters to switch sides, resulting with Sagat in the corner at the mercy of his opponent. This has since been changed to allow Sagat the ability to maintain pressure once his Ultra connects. Sagat has definitely gotten better in Ultra Street Fighter 4. Although his Tiger Uppercut can lead to his destruction if done incorrectly, his other changes allow for solid players to control the flow of the match better than he ever could. Considered the more offensive of the twins, Yun's pressure is what nightmares are made of. Will he still haunt his opponents with his abilities? Let's check out his changes and find out. Yun players remarked that no matter how much they attacked the opponent, it was as if they weren't doing much due to Yun's low damage output. To address this, the damage on his standing and crouching medium punches have both been adjusted so that now he deals more damage overall. Back in Arcade Edition, Yun had a cross-up which allowed him to mix up the opponents. Unfortunately, this was removed, thereby limiting Yun's cross-up attack to his dive kick, which can be quite risky. In an effort to give him more offensive options, his jumping medium kick now has cross-up properties once again. Yun players remarked that there were times that it just felt too difficult to get in on the opponent. Additionally, the dive kick, which is his main tool to close in on the opponent, was easily focus attack. To help give him another option to close in on the opponent, Yun's EX lunge punch has been adjusted so that it is now slightly more advantageous on block. This means that Yun will be able to get in without being punished as easily as before. Yun's command throw provided him too much reward as the damage after a successful command grab was unscaled, resulting in tons of damage. As this is essentially an attack, 1 point of damage has been added when the throw is successful. This means that all additional hits following the throw will do a little less damage. Overall, Yun is quite well off in Ultra Street Fighter 4. With the improvements to his damage output and his offensive capabilities, Yun players will now be able to play the way they've wanted since Arcade Edition, but in a smarter manner. He'll definitely be haunting characters once again. The self-proclaimed strongest woman in the world hasn't quite been living up to her title as of late. Will that finally change in Ultra? Let's look at her changes and find out. In Super Street Fighter 4, Chun-Li's defense was rather strong, so her low vitality was considered justified. Since Arcade Edition, however, her defensive attacks were weakened, but her life remained the same. In an effort to balance her out, her vitality was increased slightly, so that even when the opponents blow through her defensive attacks, she won't be knocked out as fast anymore. Chun-Li used to have an almost unstoppable air attack back in Super Street Fighter 4 in the form of her rear spin kick. After being changed in AE, however, its utility decreased dramatically. Because bringing it back to the Super Street Fighter 4 version would make it too good, it's been adjusted to be that much more useful than it was in AE 2012, but it still does require timing to be effective. In AE 2012, Chun-Li had difficulty knocking the opponents down, which is what was necessary for her to properly zone and slow the rushdown of the opponents with. To help increase her options, her EX Gouken now knocks down on hit, unlike before. Chun-Li's spinning bird kick was one of the attacks that Chun-Li players requested something be done to. Although each version did decent damage, they left Chun-Li in a situation where she'd be in a guessing situation along with the opponent. In an effort to differentiate their uses, the light version now knocks down but does less damage than before, whereas the heavy version also knocks down but has more recovery and does more damage. The middle kick version is still unaffected. Both of Chun-Li's ultras were decent in their own right, however Chun-Li players remarked that they could use a little bit of an adjustment. They remarked that with Masenka, certain characters would fall out, thereby making the ultra kind of useless, while the damage on the Kakosho left a bit to be desired. In an effort to make these ultras a bit better, the kicks during the initial part of Masenka now float the characters differently so they're less likely to fall out, while the damage from Kakosho was increased slightly. Chun-Li is definitely one of the strongest women in Ultra Street Fighter 4. The changes to her spinning bird kick and next Gouken mean that she now has stronger offensive and defensive options, while the increase to her overall vitality means that she'll be harder to knock out. Additionally, with the increase in damage on her ultras, she now has a comeback factor as well. This Turkish oil wrestler is definitely slippery when wet, but almost as defenseless as a beach shark when taken out of his element. Will the changes made finally allow him to have some bite when he's not oiled? Let's continue on and find out. Hakan's crouching medium punch had good range and decent damage, but still felt lacking. In an effort to make this attack a bit better, it is now special cancelable. This sets up new counter hit combo scenarios, as well as lets Hakan fight from further out. Of all the grapplers in the game, Hakan was the only one who didn't have a cross-up. As a cross-up is essential for grapplers to keep up their pressure and mix up tactics, his jumping middle kick has now been given cross-up properties. When Hakan was in his non-oiled form, his ability to knock down the opponent was rather limited and was only available through special attacks. Due to that, the threat of being knocked down or pressured by a non-oiled Hakan was almost non-existent. To address this, Hakan's step knee now knocks down in his non-oiled form. Hakan is definitely improved in Ultra Street Fighter 4. Although most Hakan players think that his oil form is extremely strong, most would agree that his non-oiled form needed some improvements to make him a more complete character. With the adjustments made, Hakan players will be able to keep up the pressure and play a range game both when oiled and not oiled. Ken has always been on a mission to prove he's the better Shoto for quite some time. Will he finally be the Shoto to beat? Let's check the changes and find out. A lot of fans said how they envisioned Ken as a flashier, faster-paced Shotokan character, yet his walk speed begged to differ. In an effort to have Ken be closer to how fans envisioned him, Ken now walks faster than he did before. Ken players remarked how Ken could combo into a sweep in Arcade Edition and how they wanted it back. As this was highly requested, the startup was reduced so that he could once again combo into it. However, in an effort to keep it balanced, a bit of recovery was added so that the opponent can punish him if he misses the attack. Ken's medium and heavy Shoryuken attacks have seen some key changes. Ken's medium Shoryuken had a tendency to hit on the way up, but would miss on the second hit, resulting in Ken being punished. To fix this, the first hit now knocks down. Due to its high reward and low risk, Ken's heavy Shoryuken has been changed in that it now is a bit more negative on block when focus cancels forward. Now Ken players will have to be smarter when they throw this out, as the punish could be devastating. Those who fought Ken remarked how frustrating it was for Ken to easily get out of the corner after working so hard to get him there. To address this, the trajectory on Ken's air hurricane kick has been modified on the way up. It's still the same on the way down, however, as to not mess with Ken's mix-up game. Ken's Shoryuken was rather weak when it hit in its non-animation form, which resulted in many opponents not having to really worry about it. In an effort to make this ultra more threatening and useful, the damage on the non-animation version has been increased by a little bit. Overall, Ken is a bit better in Ultra Street Fighter 4. Sure, his Shoryuken may have been nerfed slightly, but that was a change applied to every other character with an invincible attack in the game. The improvements to some of his attacks and overall damage means that opponents will now have more to fear about Ken once he gets in, while his faster walk speed means that he'll get in just that much quicker. Guile has been slowly strengthening his Bushin ninjutsu in every version of Street Fighter 4. Will he finally have enough strength to be the best in Ultra? Let's check out his changes and find out. Guile players mentioned how they felt that Guile took too long to close on the opponent, which let the opponent get away from whatever offense he was trying to mount. To address this, Guile's walk speed was increased slightly. This way, he'll now be able to get into the ranges he needs to even faster. Guile's crouching middle punch was quite strong in AE 2012 in that it made Guile low profile and was extremely hard to trade or beat. As it is quite unusual for a low profile attack to function as an anti-air, crouching middle punch has been adjusted so that it is no longer as dominant as it once was. As the change to Guile's crouching middle punch left him lacking an anti-air, his far standing light kick has been adjusted to take its place. To make the far standing light kick more useful, the startup has been reduced and the hitbox above him has been increased. This way it'll hit the opponent much more consistently. Many Guile players have continuously voiced their frustration on Guile's target combo for not functioning as it looks. In an effort to address this, the hitbox on the second attack has been extended forward slightly to increase its consistency. Guile's neck flip is great for breaking armor when both hits connect. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case sometimes, as some characters were too small to get hit by the first kick, thereby resulting in Guile getting punished when he shouldn't have. To address this, the hitbox on the first attack has been extended vertically so that it'll hit the opponents much more consistently. Guile players will agree this is the version that they've been waiting for. With Guile players now being able to use all of his attacks much more consistently and with confidence due to their fixes and improvements, he'll be much more intimidating once he gets in. Overall, he has gotten better and will definitely be a character to watch for in Ultra Street Fighter 4. This Yoga Master has been playing hard to get for quite some time, as he's not very scary and close. Will that still be the case this time around? Let's explore his changes and find out. Dhalsim's back and middle kick is the primary attack used by Dhalsim players to combo into either his regular or EX Yoga Flame. The issue with this attack, however, was that it sometimes pushed the opponent out too far, thereby causing the Yoga Flame to miss, setting up Dhalsim for a big punish. To fix this, the pushback on the back plus middle kick has been reduced slightly. If there's one thing Dhalsim players requested, it's for Dhalsim to do more damage in general. In an attempt to address this, the damage on two of his more useful attacks, the back and heavy kick and far standing hard punch, have both seen an increase in damage. Dhalsim players regarded his EX Yoga Flame as one of his weaker special moves due to its slow startup and no real advantage after connecting with it. In an effort to address this, the EX Yoga Flame now has less recovery, thereby allowing Dhalsim to connect another attack afterward. With the introduction of Ultra Combo Double, Yoga Catastrophe had a chance of coming out when players were trying to go for an extremely low Yoga Shangri-La. To fix this, Yoga Shangri-La is now done with kicks. Dhalsim is in a better place in Ultra Street Fighter 4 than he was in AE 2012. The improvements to his in-close attacks mean he's going to score more damage much more consistently. Additionally, his ability to combo into EX Yoga Flame has been improved, which means he'll be able to push opponents back out to his optimal range, but not before taking a decent chunk of life. This English Pugless has been using his fist to pummel lowbrow opponents in Super Street Fighter 4, and only gets better and better with each version. Will he keep it classy in Ultra? Let's check his changes and find out. Dudley players pointed out that some of his attacks, primarily his crouching light punch and kidney blow, did not hit as far as the animation would lead you to believe. As this resulted in Dudley's pressure being reduced, the hitbox on both attacks has been increased so that 1. The hit matches the animation, and 2. Dudley can keep up his pressure. Dudley's ability to put the opponents in a hard knockdown state was extremely limited in AE 2012. This meant that Dudley players had to rely on a standing high-low reset to keep the momentum going. To address this, Dudley's dart shot can now juggle airborne opponents during air combos, thereby giving him a new option for a hard knockdown. Although Dudley's short swing blow has throw invincibility, opponents could throw it before it connected, thereby defeating the purpose of the initial throw invincibility. In an effort to increase the utility of this attack, the throw invincibility has been extended throughout the entire short swing blow. Dudley players had to work extremely hard to close the distance in on some matchups. Unfortunately, some of his stronger combo enders resulted with the opponent being pushed too far back, which meant Dudley players would use suboptimal enders or resets to maintain momentum. By adjusting the pushback on Dudley's heavy machine gun blow, Dudley players will not have to worry about sacrificing their advantage and can maintain pressure. In Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, Dudley's Rose Throw led to a great high-low game which made him formidable. His Rose Throw in Street Fighter 4, however, was a far cry from its previous usefulness in Street Fighter 3. As bringing this attack to its former glory was much desired, the recovery on the Rose Throw has been reduced, while the advantage when the Rose hits has been increased. Overall, Dudley has become much more formidable this time around. He now has the ability to fight from further out due to his improved hitboxes, which was his primary weakness. That, paired with his newfound ways to keep up pressure through hard knockdowns and high lows, means that once he gets the momentum going, he'll be one of the scarier characters in Ultra Street Fighter 4. This Russian wrestler has long been considered the best grappler in the series. Will he still retain that title? Let's look at his changes and find out. Zangief players remarked that although the crouching light kick was a great way to connect damage against those who were trying to jump away, the difficulty linking afterward made it rather inconsistent. To help fix this, the advantage on hit has been increased slightly. Zangief's close stand middle kick left a lot to be desired. As it generally left the opponent and Zangief in a neutral state after hit, this attack was pretty much unused. To make this attack more appealing, the advantage on hit and guard have been increased slightly. Now Zangief players have a new option for both pressure and damage. Zangief players remarked that without meter, they had no real way to finish combos nor get in on the opponent safely. As his only true combo ender is the vanishing flat, each version was sped up, leaving him at a smaller disadvantage than before.
Now Zangief players can close in on their opponents faster and maximize damage with less worry. Zangief definitely still retains the title of strongest grappler. Zangief players can now maximize damage from all situations, as well as keep up the pressure without using meter. Although the change to some of his attacks may affect his ability to play a ranged game slightly, if a little patience is exercised, Zangief players may barely feel the change. Although this warrior might have forgotten his past, he hasn't forgotten how to beat down his enemies. Let's see what changes Abel's received this time around. Abel players voiced their frustration on how Abel's trademark combo of step kick into stand heavy punch had a tendency to miss on certain characters that were too short. In an effort to make this combo work universally among the cast, we've increased the size of the hitbox on the first hit of his standing heavy punch. Now Abel players won't have to worry about their momentum being lost when going for his trademark combo. Abel's crouching heavy punch is an ideal way for him to put the opponents in a scary mix-up situation or to launch them into his ultra combo. Unfortunately, the attack would miss if not done from an extremely close range, and even then it had a chance to miss. To address this, the hitbox has been adjusted so that it will hit from further out, thereby allowing Abel players to play more confidently. Second low was considered largely useless due to its slow startup and inability to connect to the finish low. This has been addressed by making second low startup a bit faster. Additionally, the hit advantage has been increased so that it will now combo into finish low, thereby giving Abel a much needed high-low game. Abel's ability to counter attacks was rather questionable, as his faster attacks have limited range and his far-hitting attacks have pretty slow startup. In an effort to give Abel players an answer to this dilemma, we've decreased the startup on his EX change of direction, thereby giving him a new option. Abel's Super Heartless had extremely limited range, so players who tried to use this in a combo from a certain range would end up having the attack miss, and then face being punished themselves. To fix this, the attack frames on his super have been increased slightly so that players will be able to connect it from further out. Due to Abel's Ultra Soulless missing in the corner, Abel players would sometimes sacrifice their position to get the opponent out of the corner for the possibility of landing it. They would also employ other methods that were extremely complicated and resource intensive to get this Ultra to connect. In an effort to address this, the hitbox on Ultra 1 has been improved so that Abel can now hit cornered opponents. Abel's gameplay has suffered from being the same in every version. The changes given to Abel allow him to expand upon his toolset, giving him a complete game with highs, lows, and side-to-side mix-ups. Also, with the adjustments made to his attacks, Abel players will now be able to play more confidently as his attacks function as intended. All of these changes together now make him even scarier than before. Akuma continues to search for stronger and stronger opponents with each passing version of the Street Fighter 4 series. Will anyone be stronger than him this time around? Let's check out his changes and find out. Akuma players mentioned that when they hit a combo on a crouching character, they had a pretty hard time landing anything damaging without spending meter. To address this, his close standing medium kick now causes the opponent to stand. The recognition distance for this attack has also been increased as well. Now Akuma players can try to maximize their damage at all times. Akuma players pointed out that sometimes when going for combos, instead of getting the close stand heavy punch, they got the far stand heavy punch, effectively ending their combo prematurely. To help with this, the far stand heavy punch can now be special cancelled. Now if the attack comes out, Akuma players will still be able to maximize their damage output. Akuma Shoryuken was one of the attacks that provided Akuma with tons of benefits without much risk. Firstly, he was able to see if the attack hit or not, and then choose to cancel it, and even after cancelling it, he was still safe. In an effort to balance the Go Shoryu out, his heavy Go Shoryu can now only be cancelled on the first hit when the opponent blocks. He is also at a higher disadvantage if he cancels the Go Shoryu with a forward dash. Those who fought Akuma remarked how his jump back fireball allowed Akuma the ability to control space a little too well. Even if reacted to, the minimal recovery meant that Akuma was less likely to be punished, making some matches extremely difficult. To address this, the jump back fireball had a few recovery frames added so that those who read it correctly would now be able to get a punish. Akuma players noted that Akuma throwing his EX fireball from the EX demon flip was pretty cool, but it took 2 meters, thereby decreasing its utility. That alone made them pass up on this attack for other better uses of meter. In an effort to make the EX fireballs more effective, he can now do them from his non-EX demon flip. This opens up the door to new strategies and also new combos. With the addition of delayed wake up, Akuma's playstyle has definitely changed from the knockdown vortex style of AE 2012. Fortunately, he's received some new tools to allow him new damaging options, which when paired with his fast walk speed, will result in a new aggressive way to play. Players who specialize in a keep away game with Akuma can still play that way,
but their spacing will have to be a little bit better to maintain the similar edge they experienced in AE 2012.
Fei Long has long been considered one of the best characters since Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition. Will he still retain that position? Let's look at his changes and check it out. Fei Long's crouching light kick was a large source of frustration for those trying to throw Fei Long. Due to its fast startup and ability to combo into other attacks, trying to tech a throw normally resulted in something better if done a bit early. To address this, the startup on the crouching light kick has been changed slightly. This means that Fei Long is now at a higher risk of getting thrown than he was before. Fei Long's focus attack hit a lot further than it looked, which resulted in many opponents being unable to properly space the attack. To address this, the maximum range from when the focus attack can connect from has been reduced slightly. Fei Long players mentioned that the distance at which the close standing heavy punch would come out from was inconsistent and would result in the far standing heavy punch coming out when they weren't expecting it. To fix this, the recognition range on the close standing heavy punch has been increased slightly. Now Fei Long will be able to score maximum damage much more consistently. Those fighting Fei Long voiced that due to Fei Long's generally short recovery and pushback after the Rekka attack is blocked, it felt as if Fei Long players could throw this out without much risk. To try and address this, the recovery on Fei Long's Rekka attacks has been increased slightly. Now depending on how close Fei Long players do this attack, the possibility of them being punished is a bit higher. Fei Long's flame kick allowed him a great low-risk, high-reward attack that allowed him to change the momentum of any match at will when it was cancelled into a dash. As this was considered rather strong, Fei Long's disadvantage on block has been increased slightly. Now if Fei Long guesses incorrectly, the opponent has a chance to punish him. Fei Long players voiced that they wish Fei Long's Ultra Combo 1 would hit more consistently in its non-animation form, as this would make or break a lot of their matches. To help fix this, the third hit of the non-animation version now pops the opponent up higher, so the last hit will always connect. At the end of the day, Fei Long will still be one of the most formidable characters in Ultra Street Fighter 4. Those who excel at spacing will still do extremely well. Additionally, the adjustments to some of Fei Long's attacks means that he'll be getting maximum damage whenever an opportunity presents itself. This masked warrior likes to attack at a distance to keep others away from his beautiful face. Will he always strike from afar, or will he finally venture in and get a little closer to the opponent? Let's look at his changes and find out. Vega players who wanted to adventure outside of playing defensively were usually disappointed as they found out Vega didn't even have a cross-up. In an effort to allow players to go on the offensive, Vega's jumping light kick can now cross up the opponent. Vega's ability to score damage was rather lacking if he wasn't already charging prior to attacking due to damage scaling. Additionally, with Vega always holding back, he naturally assumed a defensive position. To help address this, Vega's stand medium kick now has a larger advantage on hit. This will allow Vega to link heavier attacks off of this one, while still gathering a full charge. As Vega's damage increases when his mask comes off, Vega players voice frustration when Vega would pick up the mask automatically during some of their combos, as sometimes they threw it off intentionally. To fix this, Vega's mask must now be picked up manually. Vega players remarked how they felt Vega's Flying Barcelona special was probably the worst super in the game, as it was extremely slow and easy to stop. To fix this, the super down hits on the way up, much like his EX Flying Barcelona attack. Now Vega can maximize damage for those rare times he has a super bar. Vega players mentioned how they wished his Ultra 2 Splendid Claw was as good as it was in Super Street Fighter 4. To address this, the Ultra startup was reduced to what it was in Super. Now Vega players can punish attacks with longer recovery a bit easier. Vega has improved quite a bit in Ultra Street Fighter 4. Although he doesn't have an invincible reversal attack, he has more than enough tools to keep the opponent at bay. Additionally, Vega now has the tools he needs to be more aggressive when the opportunity presents itself. Vega players will be delighted that they now have a choice between playing offensively or defensively, something that they couldn't do before. This sassy ninja specializes in mixing up her opponents, yet is a little bit lacking outside of that. Has she finally received the tools to be a much more solid threat? Let's look at her changes and find out. Ibuki players mentioned that they felt Ibuki moved much too slow to play a range game against the stronger characters in the cast. To address this, her walk speed has been increased slightly. Now she could get it into all those hard to reach places that much faster. Ibuki's target combos all left the opponent far away from Ibuki, thereby reducing her offensive potential. To help fix this, the enders of target combos 6 and 8 now put the opponent in a float state. Now Ibuki will be able to keep up the momentum instead of knocking the opponents away. Those who fought Ibuki remarked how frustrating it was that Ibuki players would continuously use target combo 10 over and over and over as it was jump cancelable on block. As this was seen as rather abusable, the second hit of target combo 10 no longer hits those who are crouch blocking. So Ibuki players will now have to exercise better judgment or face a big punish. Largely considered to be one of the most useless moves in the game, Ibuki players wish for Sujigoi to be removed completely due to its lack of benefit. Rather than remove the attack, the recovery was completely removed so that Ibuki can act quicker. This way, even if the move accidentally comes out, it won't be all that bad. On the flip side, this might also create new awesome tactics. Overall, Ibuki is definitely a lot more solid than Ultra Street Fighter 4. The improvements to her walk speed and attacks mean that she can maximize damage at all times, while also keeping up the momentum. With the change to Sujigoi, she might yet have another tool in her arsenal when it comes to mixing up her opponent. Cody has long been bashing heads with his dirty yet straightforward prison tactics. Sometimes, however, it took a while for him to get in and get started. Will that be different in Ultra? Let's take a look and find out. Although Cody is effective when he gets in close, due to his extremely slow walk speed, he had an extremely hard time doing so. To help alleviate this, Cody's walk speed has been increased to allow him to close the distance much quicker than before. Cody players voice annoyance at how Cody's crack kick would not cross over the body of a knockdown opponent when it clearly looked like it should. Additionally, he was able to be thrown out of it late in the attack even though it looked like he was already in the air. To address this, Cody is considered airborne sooner. Now he can confuse the opponents on their wake up and also beat throws. Cody's crouching medium kick allowed him a way to be offensive while slowly edging toward the opponent. Unfortunately, on hit, it left him at a disadvantage against grapplers, whereas on block, he was a sitting duck. In an effort to add utility to this attack, he is slightly less disadvantageous on hit and a lot less disadvantageous on block. Cody's knife has always been something that Cody players have attempted to add to their game. A few of the problems pointed out with the knife is that it's too difficult to pick up the knife mid-match without losing momentum, and that you can't really combo an airborne opponent with it. To increase the knife's utility, Cody's knife pickup now acts as a special cancel. Additionally, the knife can hit opponents who are being comboed in the air. Cody had very few ways to give the opponent block damage without them retaliating or focusing through the attack. To address this, the disadvantage on his light criminal upper has been reduced slightly so that he can keep up the pressure against those who are constantly blocking. Cody is definitely a bit better in Ultra Street Fighter 4. Cody has always been considered rather scary once he got in, it's just that it took a while for that to happen. With the improvements to his walk speed and crouching medium kick, he'll be in the opponent's face faster than ever. Once in, his newfound knife and crack kick changes will help to put his opponents out before they even knew what hit him. Rufus was quite possibly one of, if not the best character in Super Street Fighter 4, but has since fell off. Will the Messiah return to his former glory? Let's look at his changes and find out. Those who fought Rufus remarked how unfair it was that his forward throw did so much damage, especially when paired with his dive kick mix-up. As this was a source of frustration for many, the damage on Rufus's forward throw has been reduced. Rufus players mentioned how Rufus didn't really have any ranged attacks and therefore felt disadvantaged when he wasn't immediately next to the opponent. To fix this, his far-standing middle punch is now special and focus cancelable. Now he can punish and hit combos from further out. On certain crouching characters, Rufus's close-standing heavy punch would miss, thereby making the matchup inherently difficult as he wasn't able to use his most optimal combo. To address this, the hitbox on the close-standing heavy punch has been increased so that it will hit all characters consistently. If there was one change that single-handedly weakened Rufus, it was the change to his EX Messiah kick in AE 2012. This change resulted in Rufus going over a decent number of characters, thereby nullifying his own reversal. As this was probably the one thing that all Rufus players wanted to see fixed, the EX Messiah kick has been reverted to its previous form. Rufus is one of the few characters in the game who can land his Ultra off a variety of situations, thereby giving him a higher comeback potential than most. As the probability of Rufus landing his Ultra once per round is quite high, the damage was reduced slightly so that dependency on it will be reduced. Rufus is a lot more formidable in Ultra Street Fighter 4. Sure, the damage on his forward throw and Space Opera Symphony have been reduced, but he's gained new tools that allow him to play a more complete, well-rounded game. Also, with the change to his EX Messiah kick, Rufus players will now have a reversal they can use with confidence like they once did before. Although disregarded for being a weak character for quite a while, towards the end of AE 2012, Oni slowly began his climb to become one of the strongest characters in the game. Will his climb continue in Ultra, or will he fall flat? Let's look at his changes and find out. The first change Oni players will notice is that Oni's vitality has decreased. The primary reason for this is that just like Evil Ryu, Oni does heavy damage and now he can make his Shoryuken safe. Oni players remarked how they would like to use Oni Sweep more, but it came out much too slow and had quite a bit of recovery. To help make this attack more viable, the startup and recovery have both been reduced slightly. Oni players remarked how his focus attack didn't hit anywhere near as far as it appeared to, thereby lowering their confidence when using this attack. To help with this, the range on his focus attack has been increased slightly so that now it hits as far as the attack looks. Those who fought Oni complained how his light Sexay would get him out of mix-ups as Oni was airborne on the first frame. As this was considered rather unfair, the light Sexay is now airborne on the second frame. It still does, however, retain its throw invincibility from the first frame on. Oni players remarked that Oni not being able to cancel his Shoryuken with the focus attack was rather unfair as he was the only one who didn't have that ability. To try to fix this, his Shoryuken is now cancelable, but only on the first hit. Additionally, Oni's disadvantage on block when he cancels the attack means that opponents can punish him if done correctly. With Oni's life reduction, Oni players will have to play a little bit more carefully to win. That said, his ability to cancel a Shoryuken and his other attacks functioning better from further out mean that the risk associated with playing him in close have declined, thereby making it harder for him to actually lose him. Overall, he's still a strong character, and in the right hands, he's still definitely going to continue his climb to the higher ranks.
Oh no, I'm trying to do a reverse draw!
Wow, weird range.
Wow, what? That knocks you down. Whoa, I'm scared, man.
Whoa.
Oh, what? You can punish that?